There are recipes that took years to perfect, carefully measured, tested again and again, refined until nothing could go wrong. There are these. Foods that weren't planned, that weren't tested, that weren't even supposed to exist. They were mistakes. Burned, spilled, overcooked, forgotten. Moments where something went wrong, and somehow went unbelievably right. Today, billions of people eat them, every single day, without realizing. They were never meant to happen. And once you know the stories behind them, you'll never look at your food the same way again. Let's start. 10. The melt that wasn't planned, grilled cheese. It wasn't created by a chef. It wasn't designed for a menu. It was survival. During the Great Depression, people needed food that was cheap, filling, and fast. Bread was accessible. Cheese lasted longer than fresh ingredients. So someone did the simplest thing possible. They put cheese between slices of bread and applied heat. No technique. No intention. Just necessity. But something changed. The bread crisped into a golden shell. The cheese melted into something rich, smooth, and almost addictive. It wasn't just food anymore. It was comfort. Today, it shows up everywhere, from school lunches to gourmet restaurants charging premium prices for the same simple idea. All from a moment where someone just needed to make something work. 9. The sweet mistake, chocolate chip cookies. Cookies existed long before this. But chocolate chip cookies? They were never part of the plan. In the 1930s, a baker named Ruth Wakefield was making chocolate cookies. But halfway through, she ran out of baker's chocolate. So she improvised. She broke a chocolate bar into chunks and mixed them into the dough. She expected it to melt completely. It didn't. Instead, it held its shape. Soft cookie, warm pockets of melted chocolate. A contrast no one had tasted before. It wasn't supposed to work, but it did. And it didn't just become popular. It became the most iconic cookie in the world. All because someone ran out of the right ingredient. 8. The problem that changed ice cream, the cone. Ice cream is ancient. Waffles are ancient. But combining them? That wasn't planned. At the 1904 World's Fair, an ice cream vendor faced a simple problem. He ran out of bowls. No bowls meant no sales. Right next to him, a waffle vendor. So they did something quick. They rolled the waffle into a cone and placed the ice cream inside. That's it. No strategy. No long-term vision. Just problem solving in real time. But that small decision changed how the entire world eats ice cream. It became portable. Mess-free, effortless. A mistake that made the experience better. 7. The angry chef, potato chips. This one started with frustration. In 1853, a customer kept sending his fried potatoes back. Too thick. Too soft. Not good enough. The chef, George Crumb, had enough. So he did something extreme. That he sliced the potatoes as thin as possible, fried them until they were crisp, and added extra salt. It wasn't meant to impress. It was meant to prove a point. But something unexpected happened. The customer loved them. Crispy, salty, light, completely different from anything before. What started as irritation turned into one of the most addictive snacks ever created. A moment of frustration that didn't just satisfy one customer, it created a craving the entire world still can't escape. 6. The cake that failed, brownies. Brownies weren't designed. They were a baking failure. One version of the story says a baker forgot to add baking powder to a chocolate cake. Without it, the cake didn't rise. It stayed flat, dense, heavy. By all standards, it was wrong. But instead of throwing it away, someone tasted it and realized something. It didn't need to rise. Because what it lacked in structure, it made up for in intensity. Rich chocolate, soft center, deep flavor. It wasn't a failed cake. It was something entirely new. A mistake that became a dessert classic. 5. The accident of time, yogurt. This one goes back thousands of years. Milk, left out too long. Normally, that's waste. But in ancient times, people stored milk in animal skin bags, and something unexpected happened. Natural bacteria interacted with the milk. It thickened. It turned slightly sour. But it didn't spoil. It transformed. The texture became smoother, the taste became deeper, and it lasted longer than fresh milk. It wasn't carefully invented that it was discovered, and instead of throwing it away, people tasted it and kept it. What started as milk on the edge of going bad became something entirely new. Today, it's one of the most widely consumed foods on the planet, all from a moment that should have been a mistake. For the forgotten dough, cornflakes. It started with a simple mistake. Two brothers, Will Keith Kellogg and John Harvey Kellogg, were experimenting with grains. But they left a batch of cooked wheat sitting out too long. When they came back, it had gone stale. It should have been useless. But instead of throwing it away, they tried something anyway. They rolled it out, and instead of forming a smooth sheet, it broke apart into thin, uneven flakes. Curious, they toasted it. And what came out was something completely new. Light, crispy, easy to eat. It wasn't planned, but it worked. What started as forgotten wheat became a discovery. And that single accident didn't just create a new food, it created an entire category. Breakfast would never be the same again. 3. The explosion, popcorn. Corn has existed forever. But popcorn? That required discovery. At some point, someone exposed certain corn kernels to heat. And something strange happened. They didn't burn. They exploded. Inside each kernel, there's a tiny amount of water. When heated, it turns into steam. Pressure builds until the kernel bursts, turning itself inside out. What looked like destruction was transformation. Light, airy, crunchy. It wasn't designed. It was discovered through curiosity. And today, it's one of the most recognizable snacks in the world. All from a kernel that couldn't handle the heat. 2. The mold that changed everything, blue cheese. Most people avoid mold. But this time, it created something extraordinary. Legend says a shepherd left bread and cheese in a cave. When he returned, the cheese had developed blue mold. Normally, that's the end. But he took a risk. He tasted it. And instead of being ruined, it was transformed. Sharp, complex, bold. The mold didn't destroy the cheese. It enhanced it. A mistake that turned into one of the most distinctive flavors ever created. Proof that sometimes what looks like damage is actually evolution. 1. The edge of burning, caramel. It started with something simple, sugar. Just sugar being heated. At first, nothing changes, then slowly it melts. Then suddenly everything shifts. The color deepens, the aroma grows richer, the flavor intensifies. And if you go too far, it burns. But someone, somewhere, stopped at the perfect moment, right before failure. Not raw, not burnt, transformed. Sweet became deeper, richer, more complex. Caramel. It wasn't carefully designed that it was discovered, right at the edge of going wrong. And today, it's everywhere. In desserts and drinks and flavors people can't get enough of. All from a moment where sugar almost failed, but instead became something unforgettable. Most people think great food comes from perfection. Precise measurements, perfect timing, flawless execution. But these stories prove something else. Sometimes, the best things don't come from getting it right. They come from getting it wrong. From accidents, from mistakes, from moments where something didn't go as expected. And someone chose to try it anyway. Because that's where discovery lives. And if you've watched this far, you already see food differently. Which means you're exactly the kind of person who notices the stories most people miss. So if you want more content like this, not just what things are, but how they happened, stay with it. Because the next story might change how you see something you use every single day.